Hey everyone, Ian here. What if I told you you could take a CAD file and watch it print before your eyes? That's right, print. This is a 3D printing episode, and I think it's going to be one of my favorites. So, to understand a 3D printer, you have to dissect it. A 3D printer consists of three axes: your y-axis, which goes this way, your x-axis, which goes this way, and your z-axis, which lifts up the extruder this way. What an extruder is it consists of a stepper motor, and that stepper motor extrudes plastic onto a hot end, and what the hot end does is it's like a hot glue gun, and it melts the plastic into really small filaments, and what it does is it lets it extrude it onto a heat bed. What the heat bed does is it keeps the ABS plastic, which we'll get back to. It keeps it warm when it's printing because it has a tendency to warp, which is why you need a hotbed. Now let's talk about plastics. 3D printers primarily use two types of plastics: ABS, which is what we're using now, and PLA. ABS tends to be stronger, and the problem is it requires a heated build platform. So more affordable printers typically don't use a build platform. But your other option, which is also very good, is PLA. PLA is a biodegradable plastic, and it stands for polylactic acid. It's made of organic materials like corn and vegetables like that. So what the disadvantages are, it actually degrades slightly over time, like within a few months period. So some of your parts that you printed could be more brittle at the end of their life than when you started printing them. It really is depending on what you're looking for, and mainly the size is the biggest constraint. What we're using here is the PrinterBot LC, and we've modified it so it can print double the Y length, single the X length, and then it can print 2 feet on a Z-axis. And this is easily modifiable, and there are a bunch of YouTube links which I can show you how to do in the description. So now that we've seen hardware, let's move to the software. I use two programs. One is called Slicer, and the other one's called Repetier. And what a slicer does is it takes your STL file, and it puts it essentially in a deli slicer, so to speak. What it does is it creates really, really thin slices, and then it's easily readable by something called the G-code app. And what that does is it takes your sliced model, and then it creates these coordinates for your 3D printer head to hit, which is what you're seeing now. It's essentially making coordinates, and it's moving to those coordinates and creating a print while extruding. And then what it does from there is that it creates into something called a G-code file, which you upload to your printer software, and that's what you're seeing here, and it should be printing right there. So next we're going to talk about accessories that you need. The first accessory, and the most important one by far, is the filament. And filaments come in two types. You either have ABS plastic or PLA, and they come in two different sizes, and they're both the same. One is 1.75 millimeter, and the other one is 3 millimeter. This 3D printer is using 3 millimeter. It's just referring to the diameter of the filament. Next, what you're going to want to use is Kapton tape. And Kapton tape is a special type of tape, and when it gets to a certain temperature, it just changes consistency a little bit. And what that does is it helps your ABS plastic or other types of plastic stick to your heat bed. Next, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to wipe down the Kapton in between prints with acetone. And what acetone does is it reacts with the ABS plastic and melts it to some degree. And what that does is it, once again, promotes adherence of the 3D print. And what you're going to find along the beginning when you start is it's going to slide off the bed, and you're going to have to adjust it. And it takes some trial and error, and just the cotton swabs to wipe it down. Now the next question is, how do I learn how to 3D print? 3D printers are not necessarily in the same capability set as your average home printer. You can't just click and print. There's a lot of setup, a lot of changing scripts, a lot of changing codes, and so what you have to do is you have to adjust it. It takes a lot of time. I mean, if you buy a 3D printer, it's going to take 5 hours of just setup. And some 3D printers will say out of the box, but I won't necessarily say it's out of the box. It's either going to require a little bit of assembly, or the software is not going to be exactly modified for that 3D printer, so it takes trial and error. And there's a lot of YouTube videos, which I'll leave links into in the description, which will help you learn how to do it. So now we're going to show you how to 3D print something from start to finish, getting it from Thingiverse, Thingiverse, which is kind of like the Google for 3D files. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put it through both applications, and then to the 3D printer, which is going to print it. Watch what happens next.
So you're going to go to thingiverse.com. Then you're going to see a bunch of options. It's going to have featured things, but we're going to search for what we want, which is first. Next, we're going to find the logo. We're going to download the STL file. If you notice, it'll say firstlogo.stl. And then we are going to unzip it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to import it into the Slicer software, which I'm about to pull up. And what that's going to do is it creates a G-code file. And what a G-code file is it creates a toolpath based on coordinates for the printer head to meet, and then the Z-axis just raises up one step, and then the printer does another toolpath. And so since this is a straight object, it's just showing the profile of the object. And so now that we're importing our G-code file, we're going to import it into Repetier. And what that is going to do is that is the actual software that the 3D printer connects to. And some of these types of softwares actually have Slicer built in, but this one I prefer just to have an external Slicer software. And so what's really interesting is that the blue is the actual 3D printed object, and the light blue is the toolpath that the extruder takes. And if just by looking at it, you can tell how efficient the software is.
And there you have it, a 3D printed part, straight off the press and kind of hot like a regular printed paper too. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.